Because I guess to the layperson, if someone says it's 11% of new building standard, it sounds very low.
It is low.
On the face of it, doesn't seem consistent with not posing a risk to occupants.
The building score puts it in the earthquake-prone bracket, but there are many buildings throughout New Zealand which would score a similar value.
Right, and so when you said does not pose an immediate risk, what do you mean by immediate in that sense?
We were, as I described, the understanding at the time of the seismicity in Canterbury was that we would expect aftershocks, but we were expecting diminished shaking. We weren't expecting the unprecedented shaking that we saw. And so when we talk about immediate risks, I'm really talking about the immediate knowledge that yes, there'll be aftershocks and it should hold up to those, and in fact it did. Our subsequent inspections, we didn't see in our subsequent inspections, we didn't see any cause for concern.
Such as Boxing Day, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
The Boxing Day event, for example, we did see some concern in the parapet at 143 Cheung Street, and we advised some barricading and some stability to the parapet.
Okay. But if there was a significant earthquake, then that wasn't included in the immediate.
That's correct, and we do note that in the report that the building is earthquake prone
and still liable to collapse.
Still liable to collapse in a significant future earthquake.
Right.
I think we didn't use the word collapse. I think we used the word failure.
Sorry.
I think we used the word failure. It would subject to a failure in a significant future earthquake.
I wonder if you just might bring that microphone up a bit. It might not.
Sorry.
It might just be me, but thank you. All right, so I think you made the point in your letter that you didn't specifically advise the owner as to safety of the building, other than that sentence that I've read out to you about it not posing an immediate risk.
That's correct. We advised on the risk that their building had. The risk revolved around the damage that it had seen, and we did spell out that there was no immediate risk, but that damage needed to be taken care of and repaired in the short term. But we stressed that the damage and repairs that we were talking about would not improve that 11% score. It needed to be done, but what was needed was a detailed strengthening scheme to be fully investigated and designed and implemented, and we gave a time frame for that.
Do you accept that to a layperson owner, reading that it didn't pose an immediate risk might be equated with that it wasn't a safety concern, subject to the repairs?
Possibly if you only read that one statement and took it in isolation, but
if you read
the whole report, I think it's clear in the report that what we were advising was that this is a building with a very low score and needed to be, under the Council's earthquake-prone, dangerous and incendiary buildings policy, it required strengthening.
Okay. We're just talking about those recommended repairs. I think you said in paragraph 7.2 of your report, let's find it.
Paragraph, sorry?
7.2, sir.
7.2, page 26.
Yes. Well, firstly, perhaps just above 7.2, in the penultimate paragraph to 7.1, you've said there...
Sorry.
That's all right. The penultimate paragraph to 7.1, so you've said in the middle of that paragraph, we do not consider the earthquake damage to the buildings to be so significant as to pose a danger to the building's general stability. However, attention should be given to stabilising the parapets at 143.
Correct.
For public safety purposes. So that again was another indicator that you didn't consider that generally the stability was okay?
Yes, within the context of the assessment, which was diminished seismic shaking, yes.
In the context of the kind of building it was, you mean?
Yes, well, we obviously knew what type of building it was, but this was written and considered in the context that the seismic shaking would not be several times greater than it had gone through. So, yes, we considered that the earthquake damage didn't pose a significant risk. However, the shaking that it went through on the 22nd of February was not considered. We didn't consider that level of excitation.
Right, I see. Okay, and then 7.2, structural damage. You say there in the second sentence, some repairs are essential to ensure the operation and immediate safety of the buildings and their occupants, so should be carried out as soon as possible. Correct?
Yes.
Well, firstly, can I ask you, when you say that they're essential to ensure the safety of the occupants, how does that fit in with saying that the building doesn't pose a danger, they're not a danger to its general stability, or doesn't pose an immediate risk to the occupants if there are repairs that have to be done to ensure their safety?
I think these repairs, as has already been mentioned, if left unchecked, can deteriorate. So we wanted these repairs to be effected so that there wasn't any continuing deterioration that may result in a concern.
Right.
And also, as part of that work, we were also wanting some temporary or immediate strengthening or shoring up of the parapets. And some of that might have been to remove a barricade that had been put in place to protect, the thoroughfare underneath.
Okay. Well, then you turn to the specifics of the damage in 7.2, point 1, point 2, and point 3 and point 4. Correct?
Yes.
And so internal wall damage was the first one.
Correct.
Cracking to reinforced block walls and cracking of unreinforced masonry brickwork walls. And secondly, repairs to reinforced blockwork walls. And thirdly, repairs to unreinforced masonry walls. So you're expanding, I presume, on those two items.
Yep.
And then the third one was the parapet damage, as you said.
Yes.
Correct. So were you saying that, just leaving aside the parapet damage, were you saying that the first two repairs, the reinforced blockwork walls and the unreinforced masonry walls, they had to be repaired to ensure the immediate safety, or not? Just trying to understand maybe it's just the language used, but...
Yeah. Can you hear me? What I was alluding to there was the safety was generally from the parapets falling. Repairs to the reinforced brickwork walls and unreinforced masonry walls internally was a stability thing to bring it back to its pre-earthquake condition, but that wouldn't have affected the overall stability of the building as they were at the time, in my opinion.
So they were to bring it back to the stability it had before the earthquake.
Yes.
That would imply that it didn't have the degree of stability after the earthquake.
No, it still had. No, we didn't consider the stability to be compromised, but we suggested some repairs to bring it back to its pre-earthquake condition.
Okay. Which might have been 11%.
Yes.
Before the earthquake.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so is that perhaps I've read it wrongly, they weren't essential to ensure the immediate safety of the occupants?
No, that's correct.
But
well,
they would
other than the parapets, which were hoarded off.
I understand. But they were things that should be done, but they weren't. Without them being done, you didn't consider the building was going to fall down.
No, correct.
Leaving aside what happened in February.
Correct.
Okay. And I think I asked you in my letter how the safety of the occupants was at risk without the repairs having been completed, and you've referred to various sections of your report in 7.1, and I think this is maybe the point you were making, Mr. Barnett, that the damage noted in the report had reduced the ultimate limit strength of the structural load resistance, and that's got the potential to cause structural failure in a significant future earthquake, correct?
Correct.
Right, so in other words, in a significant earthquake, future earthquake, the building could still fail.
Yes.
And as you said, you recommended that in the medium term the buildings should be fully assessed and strengthened as required to bring them under the Council's new policy.
Yes.
Did you have any further involvement in the building after, well, you were involved after May, but after your report in December, in terms of affecting repairs other than the parapet? Any of these recommended repairs to block work?
No, they weren't.
You said that to determine this is in paragraph 7.2, that to determine the full extent of the building damage, areas that could not readily be accessed and areas where the structure was covered should be opened up to allow full inspection and assessment. Now, I don't think that was ever done.
That wasn't done, no.
No. But did the fact that that wasn't done, did that affect your ability to come to those conclusions? That didn't pose an immediate risk, etc.?
Our opinion that it didn't pose an immediate risk was based on what we could see. And we wanted to complete the picture. We wanted those wall linings removed to complete the picture. But there was no indication on the wall linings themselves or joints in the wall linings that there was movement. So yes, we wanted a more thorough inspection as part of the ongoing assessment of this work, but at the time when we requested those wall linings to be removed, there was no evidence to suggest that there was a problem. You know, there were, I don't know, Mark, you might be able to...
No, that's
Okay. So from your point of view and the assessments that have been made, did you have any difficulty as engineers with the building continuing to be occupied post-September and prior to February, and not to be, leaving the parapet issue aside, and not to be any cordons or anything like that needed from what you'd seen?
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
Well, from your assessment of the building in December, up to December, did you have any difficulty with the building being tenanted and continuing to be tenanted between September and February?
No difficulty. I think as we are now understanding, these things take time, and you know, we make a recommendation in a report that wall linings are uncovered, and that needs to be considered with both the owner and the insurers, and we were expecting that instruction, but I think the earthquake came before the instruction.
Well, certainly came before you might have had a chance to do it.
Yes.
Yeah. But as I understand it, that wouldn't have stopped you coming to the conclusion that it didn't pose an immediate risk. That's
correct.
Right.
In our opinion, on the evidence we'd seen, we were of the opinion it did not pose an immediate risk, and in the subsequent aftershocks and subsequent checking, we didn't see anything that changed our opinion. We wanted to be sure that we'd seen everything, and that's why we were requesting or recommending that these wall linings were uncovered, so that we had seen everything.
Okay. Do you have any view on why the facades to 623 to 629 collapsed and the 617 and 621 didn't?
I believe that from reconnaissance photographs, when you look at the facades, 623 to 629 appears to have been constructed as one block, and perhaps 617, the corner block, is a different construction. Certainly the peeling of the facade from say 629 down to 625, it abruptly stops at that interface between under 617. 617 parapets are intact and undamaged largely.
So we can see on that
I
photo.
believe the building was strengthened as a whole, which is why it's referred to as 617. As to why that failure didn't, I don't know why 629 failed in the first place, but perhaps that transition between the block to the north of 617 and 617 itself, that's what's perhaps stopped the progressing damage.
Right. What, so the facades, one facade peeling off has led to the others, but it's stopped because they're not joined at 617?
Possibly, yeah.
Right. And finally, you heard Mr. Smith talk about the 11% calculation. Have you got any comment about what he said about that?
I agree with his comments that the IEP tool is a broad brush tool, and it's difficult to assess these old buildings. We were, however, in possession of the council records at the time we did that report, and we looked at the former strengthening report. There is a letter that we did get from council records which we included in our report. It's on page bui.col 617-625.0011.46.
Back in 1994?
Yes.
Yep.
And this is, Mr. Smith was referring to the strengthening level back in 1994 and how that equated to his determination of 20%. I'll read from the 4th paragraph down. It was stressed during discussion that provided there was no change of use to a higher risk category, it would be satisfactory to remove the hazards and ensure that the buildings can withstand earthquake forces relating to the seismic coefficient of 0.1 G. Although the later reports did refer to 0.14 G, we conservatively took this to be the strengthening level, and that's perhaps why our assessed NBS score differs from Mr. Smith's.
Okay. So, in reply, you would say that you think the 11% is likely to be reasonably accurate, given that it's an estimate, because you had taken into account the more conservative figure that
yes,
the council
indicated. Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Your Honour, I just think, looking at the time, I'm just going to check with Ms. Jemison, they have, they're organising it for the video link. I don't know if you want to interpolate that now and deal with that, or just have Mr. Ellis wait a bit longer. I don't know how long the cross-examination will be.
How long do you think Mr. Ellis will be, Mr. Elliott?
Only two quite brief issues, Your Honour. Perhaps only one. I was going to ask the Commission if they would be assisted by one of them.
Yes.
So.
Well, what do you think? We'll adjourn. We'll take the afternoon adjournment at this point and come back. And would be, well, perhaps if there could be some discussion with Mr. Ayers in the meantime as to what's most convenient for him, because I imagine that Mr. Barrett and Mr. Humphrey wouldn't mind somebody else being interposed if
Not at all.
that were more convenient. Thank you very much.
The Commissioners will now retire. All stand, please.